everybody, good morning. This is Jean here from Truelove Quilts for You. Welcome to our block party. This is the first week, our first block tutorial for our sampler quilt that we're going to be making together. One block, probably one block a week, one block every 10 days or so. I must say it's not very hard for me to make a block. It only takes me 20 minutes or a half hour or so. So in between my block party, I am going to be doing tutorials on whatever else I do. This is our basic. This is for beginners. But if you other quilters who are following me along, you can check back from time to time. These tutorials are going to be Jean's block party. My other tutorials are going to be as I was doing it, episode number so-and-so. So if you just want to look up episodes, if you're not following along, if you're not joining in the block party. Our sampler quilt, 20 12.5-inch blocks. This, friends, is my first block. Okay, I don't know what it's called. I've made it before. It's sort of like a twirling ribbon. That's what I'll be calling it. Actually, it's just block number one. Block number one, what we're doing is we're using 3 different fabrics. We're using our background fabric, and we're using 2 of our fat quarter prints. Okay, whichever configuration you want to do it, but this is the block. I don't know how I can do it. I have to put it up on my Facebook page. Not my Facebook page, my web page, my whateverquiltclub.com. People are saying, oh, can you do a pattern? I'm like, no, I'm not doing a pattern. I don't know how to do patterns. I know how to make a quilt block, and I know how to video it, but I don't know how to write patterns out. What I can do is I can put the size blocks that you need to, the size pieces that you're going to need to cut. That's what I can do. And then my video goes step by step, so you can watch the video. I'm not a pattern maker, and I don't do that. So anyway, this is our block of the week. The sort of twirling ribbons block has 16 half square triangles. I show you how to make them from square one. I think I've explained this pretty well, actually. And so, yeah. Oh, again, hopefully you folks will have perfected your 1/4 inch seam. I cannot stress enough your 1/4 inch seam, and hopefully you'll have gotten your 12.5-inch square. I mentioned it on the website in the list. I use this block, I use this square ever such a lot, my 8.5-inch square, my 8.5-inch ruler. So hopefully you got that one. But if not, then our 12.5-inch square, and let me see, 12.5-inch square block, made because I was really precise. I used pins. For you people who know I don't use pins, I used pins for you, and it came out really well. I was very pleased. So anyway, this is our block party. Oh, excuse me. I've got something here in my mouth. Block party number 1, little twirling ribbons. You can do whatever whatever one you want. I like the dark ribbon, actually, to show it up a bit. With our, what are these are called flying geese units. I tell you all about it. And I give you the actual layout of how to make this block. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the tutorial to follow for our block party, block number 1. Have at it, folks. And then hopefully we'll be able to share with each other on my web page. Got to sort that out. Got to figure it out how we do that. Your progress of your blocks. And then at the very end, Jen was saying, everyone can send a picture in of their whole quilt, so everybody can see everybody's quilt, all the different colorways. I think that's going to be super. But this is the very beginning, block number 1 of our 20 blocks, and hope you enjoy making it. And I hope I explained it well enough for you. Please let me know where I can do better on my explanations. It's just me. I'm not a teacher, as you know. But anyway, hope you enjoy it. Have fun, folks. See you later. Bye. I've opened up my beautiful fabric fat quarter packages, and I've pulled 2 fat quarters out. And what I've done is, this is going to be my block, my first block. What I've done is I've just gone over to my ironing board and I've pressed them. The creases are really, they're really folded, so you might not be able to get all the creases out, but I just like to iron them to get the worst of those creases out. I think it's important. I have my border fabric, which I can put aside for now. And then I have pulled my my background fabric, which is it's a tone-on-tone white, which I've used quite a bit before, but I can put that aside for now. What I'm going to be doing is what we need to do is we need to cut from our length, our 21 inches or so, from our fat quarter. We need to fold the selvages up. This is how I do it. We need to fold that up there. And this ends up about 4.5 inches. What we're going to be needing are 4 pieces of fabric, 4 little blocks. I'm going to just slice off the end here. I've lined it up here on my board. Just slice that off so it's nice and even. And what we're going to be cutting, for whatever rule you're using, is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, pieces of fabric that are 3 7/8. 3 7/8. So 3 7/8 is 1, 2, 3, 4 on your ruler. It's the very, very, very first line before the 4. 3 7/8 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on this side here, find my 3 7/8 and cut, lining it up there. So this is 3 7/8. Cut there. I'm going to turn it around here. I'm going to find my 3. I'm going to slice off this little end here. And then I have this perfectly cut here and perfectly cut here. Now I'm going to find my 3 7/8 and my 3 7/8, and it's perfectly square from that point to that point. And I have 4 pieces, exactly 3 7/8. I'm going to do the same exact thing with my next fat quarter. My folds up there. Fold up there. I'm going to take off this little slice just to square it up. It's that little bit. 3 7/8. Across the top there. 1, 4, just get that little line. Make sure it doesn't shift. Bring it across like that. Just slice that little end off, that little fold. And then you have perfectly square 3 7/8. Perfectly square. We have 8 of them now. Now, put them aside. I'm going to cut from my background fabric. Having lined this line up here, I've already straightened it. Now a lot of people have seen me use my all-in-one Fiskars ruler, but I'm going to be using my 6x24 inch ruler because that's what I've said to get. I'm just going to line this up. That's been all straightened up. My edge of my background fabric. This is the one that we have 2.5, 3 yards of. And I'm going to find on my ruler, if you have your large ruler, again, 3 7/8. And this is how I've done it. I just go along there. And I can see, adjusting my little ruler all the way up and down. Holding this tightly. Remember, your rotary cutter is always in the locked position. Never, ever, ever keep it on the unlocked position. It's always locked. Remember that. Keep it away from babies and dogs and cats. So only when you're going to use it do you unlock it and expose the blade. So here, I'm doing a 3 7/8 inch cut. Now, from the fold again, lining it up on my table here. I'm just going to take off this edge here. Just that little sliver. Oops. Perfectly 3 7/8. And again, find my 3 7/8. And I'm going to be needing 8 of these. 2, 4, 6, 8. And you have this small piece left over that you want to save. So I have my 8 background and my 8 fat quarters, and I'll show you what we do now. So I'm over here by my ironing board, and I really ask you to please excuse my crummy ironing board cover. After a while, your ironing board covers get really gross, and I'm going to be getting a new one. So please excuse it. It's horrible. Now, conventional quilters, what we're wanting to try to do now with our 8 pieces of white, 3 7/8, conventional quilters will take an actual ruler and a pencil or some kind of marking, and they will actually mark from one edge to another, one diagonal to another, because we're going to be sewing not on that line, a 1/4 inch away from that line in our next process. But what I like to do is I just like to, since we've cut them exact, all right, I like to just iron that line. I find that, like, you know, marking and penciling, and I mean, you're here a month of Sundays to try to get this line. Now, if you have a tone-on-tone fabric, remember to I just do it. You can do it either way, but I do mine the wrong sides together. I'm just wanting to get a line right down the diagonal of these 8 blocks, and then I'll be showing you actually how we're going to be sewing, and we're just going to be creating, this is another way, more of a conventional way to make half square triangles, and that is what this quilt block consists of. So just be very careful. You've cut them perfectly, and you're going to be ironing them. Now remember, you're going to have a nice hot iron. I do not use water in my iron. If need be, I think I've shown you before, I have water in a little spray bottle, and or I use sizing or starch. But at this point right now, I find a nice hot dry iron just to get that crease right down the diagonal of our white background blocks. Works real well. After we've pressed and ironed our white squares with the wrong sides together, we've made that crease. Remember, I told you some people want to mark it with a pencil. I crease it, and it works just as well. I come over to my machine. You might not have a big as machine as this, but I pull everything here. By all means, you can put your pieces over on the side of your table, or in here, or over to the side. But what I've done, I've gone along and I've already done these. What we've done is each square is exactly the same size. So what I've done is, with the pretty side to the pretty side, I'm going to just take my pins. These are exactly the same size. I'm going to make sure they fit real nice on each other, and then I'll take a pin and I just secure my pieces there. I've done that with all of these 8 pieces, my fat quarters and my white. Now what I'm going to do is you've perfected your 1/4 inch seam, all of you. I'm going to put my presser foot where it is, and I'm going to sew on either side of this creased line. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch down. So I put my needle down and start at the beginning, and very carefully with you've perfected your 1/4 inch. My 1/4 inch is right there. I can see my creased line, and I'm just going to sew right off. And then what I do is I turn it around here, pull that out a bit, and then come back, and again my presser foot, my 1/4 inch, is right along there. I just go slowly, and so this, where my needle's going down, is 1/4 inch away from my crease line. I'm going to continue doing that. Now there's something called chain piecing, which a lot of you have seen me do before, but for this exercise, as beginners, I want you to do each block, get rid of your things, each block, prepare them like this, as you see I've done with my pins, and each block go along and sew 1/4 inch down on either side of your creased line. Now I've come back over to my cutting mat, and what I have a pile of my half square, my squares sewn together. Now you can see that this crease in the middle with my 1/4 inch seam is right there, and what I want you to do now is, with whatever rule you have in your rotary cutter, with the edge of your ruler nestled on the crease, not the stitches, not your 1/4 inch stitches, on the crease, I want you to just cut your squares apart. So I've started doing that with my crease on the middle of the crease. Just cut from diagonal to diagonal all of my squares apart. And then I'm going to go over to my ironing board, having cut them all apart, and I'm going to set my seams, which means you just press your seam here, and then you just roll. You roll to the dark side. You roll your fabric over to the dark side, and you will get this unit here, which has these little dog ears. But you want to press that really nice, that seam, really, really nice. After you cut them all apart, you'll have 16 of these units. The next thing we want to do, after I've pressed all of my half square triangles, that is what this unit is called, is we want to get rid of these little, what are called dog ears. And all you want to do is, you just, as you can see, you just want to slice them off very carefully. If you need to, you can use a ruler to just slice off those little dog ears there, just those little corners. And what we've ended up with is a perfectly square 3.5 inch block. So if you want to go and measure your block, you're at 3.5 inches. As you can see, there's my 3.5 inches, my 3.5 inches. My block is completely square at 3.5 inches. And now comes the part, after we get rid of these dog ears, we'll start putting the pattern and the design together. After cutting off my dog ears, I've come along and I've actually laid out our first block for our block party. And what I've done is I've actually taken a photograph of this layout, and you'll have just seen it. So I don't know, maybe I'll put it on my website so you can concentrate. Basically what we have here is sort of a, if you can see this sort of a twirling red ribbon around the blocks that are, this unit here in quilting, this triangle is called a flying geese, as it were. So we have 4 flying geese units and then this twirling ribbon, and you have to concentrate on your pattern now. And once you get it right and laid out very carefully, what I want you to do is we're going to be sewing units of 2. So I want you to take your first top unit, and each one is going to be slightly different, the way the seams are going to be nested or matched up. So you see that this seam here, these 2 seams match on the bottom of this flying geese unit. So you want to pin that, the bottom. They're all 3.5 inches square. Might take a little bit of pinning since you're a beginner. You want to pin that, and then you're going to go over to your machine and you're going to stitch down 1/4 inch to get this unit here. And we're going to continue doing that all the way along. And just go slowly at this point, because you don't want to get confused. So sometimes I put them next to my sewing machine, but it's a bigger block, so I have it here, and I don't mind. I get up and I get down, I get up and I get down, I get up and I get down. And then what I also do, after I'm going to sew all of these units, the 2 together, like this, you can just see 2 together, like this, pinning it. And if you have to match the seams, those seams, and then what you want to do is you want to take it over to your ironing board. Very, very important. You know me, ironing is as important as sewing. You're going to be stitching this 1/4 inch, all of your 2 units, and then you're going to be ironing them, and then we're going to be stitching the units together. So we've sewn our 2 units together. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units of 2. Now what we're going to do, again, with our pins, we're going to take each row and just put it all over on each other, like that. And then taking one at a time with pins, we're going to stitch down this center seam. And remember, you have to nest, if you either have to nest your seams or you match your seams. If there is seams to be matched, you use your pins and you stitch along here 1/4 inch, like 1/4 inch, having perfected your 1/4 inch seam. And I recommend, again, doing one at a time, because you might get confused with the pattern. You can maybe pin them, but then come back to your design board or your design table here, having sewn one at a time, like that. And then we're going to come back and we're going to finish the rows up, but you're going to sew your 2 units together. I've sewn my center seam down, and now I have 4 rows of my block. Now, very important that you see you have this little 1/4 inch bit here. That's what you want to have, because now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our top row and flipping it over onto our second row. And again, very carefully with your pins, I want you to either nest or match up these seams as we go along here. I'm going to start at the beginning, and it's very important that you you nest those seams, and since you've done a consistent 1/4 inch, and it was funny, I was reading somewhere everybody's 1/4 inch is different, and I'm thinking, what do you mean by that? This block should turn out 12.5 inches square. I have made this block and it's turned out 12 inches. I don't know what I did. My 1/4 inch was a little bit off. Very, very important. But Jenny Doan said that one time, a very famous quilter. She said everybody's 1/4 inch is different, and I just thought that's a funny thing. And if your block does not end up 12.5 inches square, I don't want you to sweat it. I really don't. You can square up your blocks at the end of this process. 12 inches, and we'll make your sashing the same. Don't sweat it out if you haven't perfected that 1/4 inch seam. This is your first time, you're a beginner at doing this, and it can be hard. Now this seam, you're going to have a little bit of a lump here to get over that. Hopefully the seams will have nested, but sometimes it's a little bit of a lump. Don't think that you're alone in having that happen. So what I'm going to do, I've pinned all my things, and now I'm going to go over, and I'm going to sew this unit together here, and then I'll do the same with this unit here. So I have one last seam to go on my block, and it is finished. I'm quite pleased with my points. Again, don't stress out if your points don't match. That's not the greatest. That's not the be all and end all. I do find a very, very important thing, and I cannot emphasize it enough, and I'm beating a dead horse, is to make sure you press very, very well. After each block, after each row. Very, very important to have a nice flat block. So now I have my 2 units, and now I can just sew them together here on this seam here. And again, when you're pressing your seams, you always press them mostly to the dark side, but then this seam here is like light and dark. Wherever you feel comfortable that the seam will go. Sort of the fabric tells you where it's going to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this down here, and again I'm going to pin, I'm going to nest, I'm going to pin my seams together. Very important for you beginners. And very important, you've gotten your 1/4 inch seam down. And again, if you haven't, and if you're a little bit off, I don't want you to stress about it if this is your first or your beginning time. Most important, I just find most important is that you press very, very well, you iron very well, and you should be pretty good. I'm going to just go do that, and our block will be done. Here is my finished block. What do you think? This will be your first finished block. Twirling ribbons, I guess, with flying geese. Now comes the litmus test here. My 12.5 inch ruler. Is it? Oh, look at that. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. Very pleased. My block has ended up 12.5 inches because along the way I have perfected a 1/4 inch seam, and I think that is the most important. There's a little bit wonky there, a little bit off, but I think the 1/4 inch seam is what you beginners and everybody in quilting have to really perfect to get your points matched up as best they can. And to get your blocks all the same size. I have made this block before and it ended up 12 inches. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't pinning. I don't pin a lot of things. I'm pinning for you guys. But there is our block. I'm very pleased with it. Our first block for our block party. Again, this is 3 colors: your background and your two fat quarters. You're going to have more fabric left over from your fat quarters. Because we're not going to use all of your fat quarters. But like even if you have 10-inch squares, you can make it a little bit scrappy or whatever fabric you have. But basically our blocks are going to be 3 or 4 color blocks. I think the next one is I'm going to have four fat quarters actually, and a background fabric. So anyway, there's block number 1 for our block party. I hope you have fun making it, folks. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much. Bye.